I loved wearing great big earrings, and this is a painting that's very shortly after that. It's actually in my parents' house. And somebody commented how it was like an Italian miniature because it has the inside outside. And it actually is about, 7 feet wide and 5 or 6 feet high, oil paint. And this, even though it's a lousy slide of the subway, is from that time in the early 60s, sometime in the mid-60s. And much later, I did a Lifetime Dream, which was an over-life-size subway. So this is sort of a early version. And this I picked out because of the painting that's in the hallway of the ladies. You can see my self-portraits is exactly the same location. Like, that was a complete surprise when I found this slide. These were teenage kids that were outside of my studio. It's oil paint. It's about maybe also 7 by 5 feet, and this is the same size. These were the boys in the neighborhood. Very tough Italian neighborhood in New York on Grand Street. And this is a drawing of Arlene Raven, who is featured in the painting outside, and I thought that you all would like to know, she was a dear friend. This is the painting, and we can talk about it later at the Q&A. So I will jump to another project. This was for a cabaret in Times Square, but right before the real boom, and so the cabaret went bankrupt. And the painting was originally in brown and white and linen. And then when they went bankrupt, I brought it back home, and it's about 12 feet by 8 feet. And added the color and got friends to pose. And so I think it's a little out of focus, but it's all I had. And this was another piece made for the cabaret of Fred and Ginger. It's aluminum, and it's riveted together and painted with alkyd paints, and it's about 6 by 6 by not too deep a relief. So all the pieces I made for the bankrupt cabaret I got back. And this is just to give you an idea of my wonderful pastel collection and to show how I love all different materials. And just as Mr. Batchelor said last week, you get kind of into one thing and then you want to do something else, so you do something else. That's been the story of my life. Actually, the collection got bigger because a friend of mine died and I inherited her pastels. So this is pastel on wood. And it actually has a whole back, but I zapped the slide. But I thought you might like the way it has a kind of strange spatial illusion. It's size on plywood. And I like to cut out with a bandsaw, which I recommend as a tool. And this is from the early 80s, this portrait of Houston Lada, who's quite a wonderful environmental artist, and you might know his work. This is a portrait of my daughter when she was 11. She's now 39. And it was for a poster that Alice Neal recommended me to do, a poster for Planned Parenthood. And oh my God, what do you do? And so it turned out that at age 14 was the largest abortion rate. And I tried to make her 14, so I gave her a little breast and a key and made her talking on the phone over her stressful situation. So this was printed by Planned Parenthood. And it's a rare portrait of her. She doesn't like to pose. This is Rudy Brookhart, a person who was a huge mentor for me in my life. He's a filmmaker and just a wonderful artist himself, photographer and filmmaker. An example of pastel portraits that I've done throughout my whole life. This example on black paper, great dancer called Joseph Lennon, who danced with Merce Cunningham for years, and then Carol Armitage. This is a really large drawing. I think it must be about 5 feet by 3.5, 4 feet. And this is the beautiful dancer Michael Clarke, who's, if you're familiar with London scene. He worked with Lee Bowery, for example, and when I saw him just standing still like this, he looked like a Piero della Francesca. He's so beautiful. And then I thought I'd have a sample of some black and white drawings since we're all into charcoal and compressed charcoals. And there's 3 drawings here, and they were projected. They were for a magazine called Berlin, New York magazine that was sometime in the 80s. So this is Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill. So I was trying to just show different techniques, different examples. And this is Christopher Isherwood, who wasn't actually from Berlin, but he certainly lived there and wrote about it. And this was like taking the drawing and pushing it a little bit further by using aluminum and laminating the aluminum with paper, with the drawing, but riveting the aluminum together. So you can get these used litho plates that are very thin aluminum, and you can cut them with a scissor and pop rivet them, and they have a lot of flexibility and fun to work with. So even though it's a kind of an old thing, I kind of liked it. And this was an ambitious drawing of Wallace Stevens based on a photograph. I thought that poor guy I love his poetry, but poor guy was always so alone. So I made this imaginary wife. Then I found out that he had one, and that she was she was very beautiful. She posed for the Liberty Dime. Later I made an aluminum piece based on that portrait, painted with, again, riveted and painted with oil paint that's about 5.5 feet high. Then I thought I'd jump to the present. This is very, very recent pastel drawings based on drawings from Indian wedding. And it's just to get a little color going. And this is my friend and his family and his new bride. And it's on handmade Indian paper, which everybody can get. It's called Handmade, maybe you know about it. It's a .com, Handmade Paper. There's another wedding drawing. So these are straight pastels. They're just drawn out and basically colored in, not too elaborate. However, this drawing was more of like pushing it in terms of an experiment that combined different techniques that I've used both for oil paint and pastel and gouaches, playing with it, positive and negative, with light and time. I think time and scale, these are all fantastic things to think about with one's work. So this was based on an ink drawing of a kid with his camel. So camels and cows, they're very common in India. And it's just uncanny. You're just walking down the street and suddenly something's nudging you. It's a cow. Pretty far out. So I love drawing them. But then it turns out that when I traveled in Haiti, I met this Voodoo Singer, who absolutely beautiful woman, and her brother, and that was their cow, which showed a great sign of wealth. And based on several drawings, I combined them and made the painting. This painting is about 8 feet by 4.5, oil painting. This is another painting from Haiti, and I really wanted you all to see some sample of Haiti because it is the most spiritual, beautiful place in the world. So completely desperate for help from the world to send money, anything to show support. This was a scene that was behind the hotel where I was staying, and even though Port-au-Prince is 100% gone, the Olafsson Hotel is standing. It's made of wood. And this market scene is a main street that is now destroyed. These paintings were done in 2000, and I've been in Haiti now 5 times. The last time I was there was for a festival of recycled materials. It was called the Ghetto Biennale. And you all might have heard about it because an alumni from MICA this. I'll tell you about her in a moment. This is UJen, who was a recycling sculptor, and the whole city's gone, but his sculpture remains. He was one of the hosts of the festival, and as Barry was saying, they always have a sketchbook. It's a regular Rotary fountain pen kind of that. And there is Flo Magaro, who had a sexual change. She started as a woman and ended as a man, and that's him with a little beard. And we became friends at the festival. There he is again in the crowd. He was running an art school in Jacmel and unfortunately died in the earthquake. And I know her parents. James Magaro was a great American painter. So I know the school here had a memorial for Flo, and I thought you could see my drawing, which I've given the Magaros. This just gives you a feeling of what the sketchbooks are like. Originally, I had the whole book, but then I thought, well, okay, now I'm jumping again. This is from the second movie that I made when Red and I worked together. It's called Shoot the Moon, and that's me as a moonanaut on the right with the pointed hat. We went to the moon and came back, and it was an homage to Georges Méliès. And it was one of about 15 movies that we've made together when we were married from 1960 to 1976. So you're about to see a film clip of a movie that we made that is notorious in the animation world called Fat Feet. And you'll see, oh no, this is the whole movie. There's a mistake here. I have to get them to stop. Hi, Rachel. This is not, oh dear. Excuse me, Rachel. You just had the excerpt to show, not the whole movie. I mean, the movie's 20 minutes and it's fun, but we can show it another time. The excerpt was a part of me as an old lady. So I hope that John had found it earlier. It was unusual to make your own movies at the time. In Red's case, he had started by doing some performances and working with people. And this movie, Fat Feet, we worked with a lot of students and friends, and it was in stop-action animation. And I think they're having trouble finding it. It's on the DVD. This is an excerpt from Fat Feet. I don't know if they can hear me. There you go. Yay. It's only 2 minutes. Anyway, you'll see me in one of my great roles. So this is all single frame animation that was done with people and props, and the person who was the camera person behind it actually started a children's animation workshop called Yellow Ball Workshop. Having some technical problems. We did test everything. Should I go on or? Well, to go on about Fat Feet is that as a result of working with students and friends, it made it very easy to collaborate. Like everybody contributed their ideas and their artwork, and we were able to move on. I don't know whether this is going to work out.